Okay, I know you're all patiently waiting for the awards, and I want to transition now to a brief talk before we give out the awards. And the talk parallels a little bit with what Dr. Farah was talking about, which is engaging the community when building a culture. So what we're talking about is make sure that you're always asking your customers before you make any investments for improvement, and that's the parallel part. Last year, I stood up on stage here and I talked about 3 types of customers. And we still see these 3 types of customer groups. The believers are the big chunk in the middle, the non-believers on the extreme, and they're very, very few, and then the fully engaged believers on the extreme right. And there's a handful of companies in Kuwait that we think are all the way in that area where they're the change agents. We will be celebrating them in a few minutes. But what I'd really like to talk about in the next few minutes is 3 things. The importance of building a culture of excellence is number 1. The second is, what is the value of the Service Hero Award? Is there any value? And the third is, what kind of key performance indicators should you be looking at in your businesses? So culture is the first one, and we've talked very briefly about 3 types of culture, but let's kind of define culture. And if you read the press, on Google, they say one of the most Googled business words these days is organizational culture, because companies, it's become a buzzword and everyone's talking about what it means. But culture has 3 elements to it. The first is values, beliefs, and attitudes. The second is basic assumptions. And basic assumptions, we don't know them, they're invisible. They're the way you were brought up with certain beliefs. And the third one that is very visible is leadership, management style in a company, the words that they use, the terminology that they use, the symbols and traditions that they use. So these 3 components are what create, and they call it a cultural iceberg, and you can Google this after we finish. But culture is very much day in, day out, building a personality for your organization that reflects what you want it to reflect. And we beg you to think about what is the personality of our organization. And now, to give you an example, we've made up 2 brands. We're going to talk about a tale of 2 brands, and they're fictitious. The first is called The Counter, and the second is called Bistro Joie. So let's look at The Counter and what it looks like. But before we do, let me just define the restaurant category in Kuwait. The restaurant category is very, very cluttered. There's many, many brands. In this industry, there's like 200 restaurants. Mostly, they compete on location and product. Where should I open my branch? And what is the quality of the meal that I'm going to be providing? What are the ingredients, et cetera? So a lot of that is the decision-making and the culture of these organizations. And some rely on mystery shopping, which I think is an important element of market research, but it is definitely not what you should be relying on its own. It should be one of a fuller family of market research. And they use feedback forms as well. And we believe that very few really understand what makes customers come back to their business again and again. So let's look at the first example or model of the first brand, The Counter. And when we say The Counter, I want you to think of a bean counter. So this is a culture that's obsessed with numbers, with sales. Management have very tough KPIs. What's a square foot of sales in this, in this branch, in this location, et cetera. That's what they talk about in their meetings. That's what they obsess about a lot. Location is a key focus. Their decisions about their business are based on, where am I going to open this restaurant? Is it seafront? Is it in a mall, et cetera. So that's also part of their culture, if you want. Food quality is excellent in this restaurant most of the time. But on the downside, they don't really know their customers. Their customers are numbers. Their customers are faceless. And also on the downside, because management is so focused on the number side of the business, they're really not role models to their staff of friendliness and positive attitude. So that's example 1, The Counter. The second example is Bistro Joie, which means happiness, of course. And this is a culture that is obsessed with reliability, value, and friendliness. You walk into these restaurants, you feel it immediately. You walk into their management's offices, you also feel it. And management are role models. They're always there. They're in the front line. Staff know them by name. They walk the floor, as we say. They're not focusing on the numbers. They're focusing on the attitude part and the reliability and the friendliness. Food quality is not great in this restaurant. You could go there again and again. You're not going to have the best meal, but you're not going for the meal. You're probably going for some other reason. And customers are genuinely welcomed. So if you go to this restaurant, they'll know you. And the next time you go, they'll probably know you and recognize you. Same meal, sir, same meal, madam, etc. You know, hold the olive oil or whatever it is. So that's this other model. So now I've given you two examples. Let's look at the science of this. And the science says you need to understand what your customers value the most. So that's the first part. So really understands what are the hot buttons that drive your customers to your business. And what you do then is you do something called an attribute map. So I'm going to explain this to you, and we do this in the index, but it's based on knowing two things. So the horizontal line at the bottom are the 8 dimensions that we measure in the index. We've used those, but you can use other dimensions, other drivers of satisfaction to your restaurant. And you'll see they're in an order where the least important is closer to the axis, and the most important, which is reliability, is on the extreme. So to the customers of this the target customers of this restaurant, reliability is why they're coming. The second factor is value, etc. And the lowest is web. And on the vertical axis are the scores, 1 to 10, which we measure in the index. And so the idea is we plot it. The blue line here is for Bistro Joie, which we said was the culture that was obsessed with friendliness and reliability. And you'll see they score poorly on some dimensions, and they score really high on others. What are they scoring poorly on? The dimensions that their customers don't really value. So they know where to put their effort. My customer doesn't really care for website, call center, and even location isn't a driver for them to come to my restaurant. They're coming to my restaurant because I'm very reliable and I have a good value for money meal, even though product quality, which is the food itself, isn't great. You'll see that score isn't really great. And we said that in that restaurant, the food is okay. It's not the best in town. Let's take a look at the other restaurant, which we talked about, the counter. They're scoring really high on some factors, but on the factors that we said were important to customers in this segment, they're scoring really, really low. And that is the reason that we have some brands in different industries coming on stage again and again, because they understand what elements of their model their customers value, and they cater to those elements. You can't be master of everything. You have to choose where to excel in, and that's part of drawing a dimension map. Now, this data, again, is available in all the index reports that we produce, and I really urge each of you to think of what is the driver for my customers. So we've talked about culture. Let's transition now to the second topic, which is, what is the value of the Service Hero Award? And we get asked this question a lot, and we think about it a lot as a company. I mean, we exist to serve you. You are our clients. So what is the value of the Service Hero Award? Is it just a beauty pageant where we're happy that it is on some level, that people are awarded for their excellence? We celebrate that, and pictures are taken. Is it a PR campaign where companies, publicize the fact that they won? Well, it is both of those things. Of course it is. But it's more, and it's this thing about focusing on culture and focusing on a very clear strategy and a vision for the brand. Sorry, this is not moving forward. It's a celebration of clear vision and strategy. And again, I urge you, think of what is my strategy. It's not about selling things. It's about making connections with people so the experience is rewarding. And so that takes us to the last topic about a key performance indicator. We feel very strongly that the Service Hero Index, which is backed by the American Customer Satisfaction Index and backed by ESOMAR, which is the largest market research organization in the world, is a key performance indicator. It has metrics in it that you can use for your business to make critical decisions. The first key performance indicator that the index includes is brand health. So what's my productivity like? What's my satisfaction score? How reliable am I? How fast am I? What's my image in the market? Because we're measuring image with the before questions. So that's the first part of the key performance indicators that the index measures. The second is, what is my competition? What's the landscape look like? Who is the closest competitors? Where are they strongest at? Who has better loyalty than me? Who has loyalty in the groups that I really want to focus on? Who's been improving over the years? We've got 5 years of data, 75,000 records of information on every single brand in Kuwait. That's a wealth of information that companies can make use of to improve. So in addition to being an indicator for the health of a brand and the competitive landscape, finally, it's a financial performance indicator. The index, it helps you determine, forecast your sales. If you know that you're doing well today, and you know that you're doing well with loyalty, what does that tell you about your future? Your future is going to be good. If you see your loyalty going down, that should give you a telltale sign that there's something amiss we need to work on. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to wrap up with another final word about looking at the culture and looking about building this loyalty tree that we spoke about earlier. Nurture your tree, build that culture, and you will hopefully win not our award, which is less important than your customers coming back to you again and again.